Sandra Patel Stewart, CEO of Transition Partners.
And I'm Elly Nettleton, Managing Director.
Welcome back to our Let's Talk Leadership podcast, The Culture Edit.
This season, we're super excited. We're going to be focusing on how leaders embed a positive organizational culture. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on the Let's Talk Leadership podcast, The Culture Edit. I'm super excited today because we've got a fantastic guest, Nathan Wenzler, who is the Chief Security Strategist at Tenable. So I think Sandra reached out to Nathan because she saw his profile online after speaking at the Cybersecurity Summit in Dallas and thought his profile and his topic looked really interesting. Reached out to him directly, and we have the privilege of chatting with Nathan this morning. How are you, Nathan?
I'm doing great. Thank you. How are the two of you doing?
Good, very good, thank you. Like I said, I hope you've woken up this morning, because if not, this one's going to surely wake you up with her voice.
Yeah, certainly a loud one for first thing in the morning for you over in the US. But great to have you on the podcast today to talk about your journey, and cultivating culture. So before we start going into some questions to really dig deep there, I'd love to know more about you, your current company and role at Tenable, and your career journey to date, Nathan.
Yeah, thank you. By the way, and I'm really grateful to be here today because I think it's, I come from a information security kind of technology background, and I think it's something that culture and all of this gets very much overlooked in the tech sector in general.
Yes. Yeah.
But as I think we'll talk about today, incredibly important. And so yeah, for me and my journey, I mean, I've been in the information security field about 25 years. Started my career in government, of all places, sort of did it backwards instead of retiring there. Helped build security programs from scratch for government agencies here in the US, and then moved into the private sector and I kind of bounced around a little bit. I was a chief security officer for a couple of small companies. So I ran security programs and teams, and then got into consulting after a while, doing management level, organizational level consulting, really trying to help C-suite folks try to figure out what was wrong. Like, why is my program not working? And, certainly learned very quickly that a lot of the times it's a culture and a people problem rather than a technology problem. And so now I get to leverage all of that experience here at Tenable as the chief security strategist for them. We're a software company primarily. We're the originators of the vulnerability management scanning tool Nessus, which is for most tech practitioners very, very well known tool. It's been around 20 something years. But my role is really kind of this sort of thing. Like I get to work with our customers, work with people out in the field. Part of it's sharing thought leadership, but a lot of it is really just sitting down with folks to say, yes, we're a software company, but we want to help you be successful. Here's a resource where someone can sit down with you and your team and work with you to say, how can we help you do it better? What obstacles are you finding? Here are some recommendations for, how to better get through the political obstacles, or how to help your staff be more effective, those kinds of things. It's that subtle sort of people piece of it that makes the process and the tools part be successful. And so we're taking a little bit more of a holistic approach here at Tenable for that kind of thing, which is why I'm here.
That's great.
And that's what I get to do. So
that's awesome. And I think particularly your background with the consulting and working with clients, etc., you get to get a taste of other people's cultures. So it'll be brilliant to hear more about that today. Interesting what you were saying about the challenges. It's not always the tech, and quite often it's the people. And when it's the people challenges, they're often a lot more difficult, aren't they? A lot more complex on that side. So it'd be great to hear more about you and your background and experiences today. So with Tenable, let's start as that for a bit of an example, but I guess prior to that as well, how's sort of the culture evolved over the years?
Well, I think more than anything, and again, I come at this from somewhat of a tech sector kind of mindset, right? So it's a little bit different, I find, when I've talked to, HR folks and marketing, those kinds of organizations. They're a little more in tune with people. The idea of culture is not really a thing in a lot of organizations. So we talk about evolution. 20 years ago, working in IT departments or for security teams, it just wasn't a consideration at all. You just really didn't see organizations at that level talking about taking care of their employees or having a strong, supportive culture where discussion is encouraged. It's very much an operational kind of mindset. You're here to solve a problem. Go solve the problem, check out, and you're done. And we're all techies. We don't want to talk about how we feel or any of that
wasn't
kind
it?
of
It's
thing.
just purely about what tech skills have you got? What tech experience? I mean, I've been in the industry for 19 years and I've seen such a dramatic shift and change for the better, but it's still evolving.
Agreed.
Different industry, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a very different industry, and you're absolutely right about the that mindset changing. I mean, I've seen that even in just the last, arguably last 10 years, really, that shift has started to happen. And I think for us, we see it in the information security field as also sort of a maturing of this field of work. Security, as it turns out, is really not an IT function. It's not a tech function. We're actually a risk management function for most organizations. We've become more of these like business aligned. How can we help protect the business from a data breach or from being sued or being liable for violating GDPR or some privacy law, right? So once you start having those kinds of conversations, you really are now involved in the culture of the business. I mean, as a security practitioner, we have to help the business kind of operate in a way that encourages people to not steal intellectual property, not do the things that exposes customer data. And that also means the kind of things we've been talking about kind of offline a little bit, and I know from your podcast you all talk about quite a lot, having that strong supportive culture where employees feel valued, where they feel that they are part of a diverse team, where you have lots of multiple points of input and your contribution is valued. We're starting to understand sort of the tech side of things. That's one of the key components to have a successful program, because if your culture supports those kinds of things, and that's where we've evolved into, when your culture supports those kinds of things, your employees are stronger advocates for security. They're more willing to listen and follow policies because they feel like they're part of the team. They feel like they're heard. And it started to become a very, very important part of not just, broad corporation things, but I see more technical leaders, your CIOs and your chief security officers, starting to make culture part of their technical security plans because they recognize how important it is that the people buy in and support what you're trying to do. It's really critical.
Definitely. I guess this probably question's more related to that piece around that evolving side of it that you mentioned, but it'd be great to hear at Tenable how they approach career development, because obviously that's a big part and a big aspect of that.
Yeah, Tenable, I got to tell you, and I know obviously I'm a little bit biased because I work here, but Tenable is really fantastic about this. They are one of the more supportive companies I've come across when it comes to career development. There are a number of internal training initiatives they do. So there's a constant technical skills training type of thing. They provide tuition reimbursement for people. And I think one of the important parts about that is the way the policy is written is fully inclusive of whatever it is you want to learn. 15, 20 years ago, some of the organizations I worked for, if you wanted to have some sort of tuition reimbursement, you had to justify it as specifically related to your role, right? Yeah.
Or you'd
Tenable,
have to do it in your own time.
Yeah, absolutely. Tenable's written all that out of their policies. Essentially, they say, like, look, if it's valuable to you, we'll support that. You want to learn a new skill set? That's great. You want to go take an art class because that's something that inspires creativity? Great, go do that kind of thing. The value of those broadened skill sets for employees is so powerful. We see that more and more with all kinds of studies that show this today, right? But it's a big part of the culture here for Tenable is to support employees in what they're interested in, make certain that they have a lot of options for career development, for education. Some of that also includes mentorship. We have a very strong mentorship program. It's something I'm actually a part of.
Right.
It's one of the leaders here. And so and it's kind of interesting because the mentorship, again, is not in sort of a direct hierarchy.
Yeah.
So I have, one of the people I've mentored is one of our senior marketing people.
Oh, great.
Work in marketing, but that kind of dynamic about public speaking and engagement with broader teams and audiences, I mean, that was something I was able to help with. I've helped people on the technical side who are trying to move up in their technical skills and whatnot. So, even the mentorship program is not siloed into, here's your job and you have to stay in this point.
Yeah.
Career development here is a much broader, we want to support you as a well-rounded employee. Let's help you get there. So it's been a big part of our culture here to have that. It's been great.
I love that. Like, if it's important to you, it's important to us, isn't it? It's about you looking after your people. So that's great to hear.
Yeah, definitely. And it's fantastic to hear that there's that balance. Like you say, it's not, you're not just pigeonholed into one team, one area, and that you can freely move around within the business. And we do something similar to that here, don't we? Which is, because it's about playing to everyone's strengths as well, isn't it? Which is fantastic. So probably leads me quite nicely onto our next question, which is, we're really interested, I think, for our viewers and listeners to understand. Obviously, you've got a wealth of experience, wealth of background, great public speaker. You've spoken on other podcasts and things, and at events and things as well. In terms of your career today, what would you say is like the best bit of career advice that you can offer to people who are aspiring and looking to develop themselves and following, kind of your similar footsteps in terms of leadership?
Boy, I think there's two answers, if you'll bear with me, because I think on one side of it, a lot of folks in my realm of things, we come from the technology side, as I said.
Yeah.
A lot of us came up, those of us who've been doing this 20, 25 years. It was a time when security as a concept didn't really exist. There were no chief security officers, there were no leaders. We were just part of the IT team. So you start in this world of being an IT, desktop support person, and suddenly 20 years later, you're a chief security officer running a massive team at an international company. That's a big leap. And so I tell people from the technology side, if you're coming up from that and you're trying to build those leadership skills, you're trying to learn how to develop the people side of things, it's critical that we start to address the way we educate people in this world, especially right now, as we have the next generation of folks coming up, that STEM training, as I'm sure we're all familiar with, I argue is not the right thing. It really should be STEAM. And I'm seeing this come out a little bit more, but it's the science, technology, engineering, arts.
Interesting.
Incorporating communication skills training, public speaking training, writing skills, all of that soft skill, people skill, creative thinking, creative interactions with other humans, and how we connect. It's a really, really fundamental part of your training process. If you're a technologist and you're leaving that part out, you are doing your long-term career a big disservice. And quite frankly, you're doing your technology skills a disservice too. There's the kind of creativity that arts programs will support and inspire you to think. You'll find more creative solutions to technical problems. You can express the solution to other people in a more creative way. They understand you.
I guess with the future of AI as well, that's going to be even more important, isn't it? So I think from that perspective, I haven't heard anyone mention that before, but I completely agree.
We haven't had anyone on the pod before mention that, have we? But it's such a great point, because I think it's a lot of tech teams or tech leaders, I think people just kind of think that these things kind of happen and evolve naturally, or that they're a given, and actually not. It takes a lot of work and effort to to strengthen those skills. They don't just, you're a natural speaker.
Well, no, you make a really good point. For some people, I mean, they do believe that it's just this inherent skill, right? And some people are natural speakers, no question.
Yeah.
But the truth is, it is learned. Like it is a learned, practiced thing.
Yeah.
And if you're just focused on developing software or writing the next great AI algorithm, you actually bring up a really good point about that, because we've seen the lack of sort of creative thinking around AI developed projects has created a lot of problems. I mean, we saw 4 or 5 years ago, there was a whole big thing about facial recognition stuff, right?
Yeah.
Where it wasn't picking up certain people of color's faces because their skin tones were not correct for the algorithm. And when they went back and looked at it, they're like, well, why didn't that come out in development? Why did no one think of that? Nobody was thinking outside of the box except the room that they were working in, right?
Well, diverse.
Adopting that creative thinking, that broader mindset of culture, of course, diversity, inclusivity. I mean, having that promoted gets you thinking more about those kinds of things. But that creative mindset, would have more likely had a group like that sit and go, let's think about all the ways that this could go wrong and try to address that, rather than just, here's a process and I will execute the process every day. Right?
Yeah.
Complete change in mindset and culture for technology folks like that.
Yeah. Great bit of advice there. Really, really nice to hear that, because we haven't heard that before on the podcast, and you made absolute great point there. On that note, from a leadership point of view, again, how would you describe your leadership style, and how would you say that makes for or cultivates a great, strong culture?
For me personally, I very much adopt a leadership style that, quite frankly, my very first mentor in the industry taught me. And I've carried it with me all these years, and I still advocate for it to this day. It's not revolutionary, but I really think it is the right and proper thing to do. And it's essentially is this: wherever you sit on an org chart, you turn it upside down, and you are there to support then every single person above you. You are not the most important thing as a leader. Your people are the most important thing. Your teams are the most important thing. Their success is the most important thing. Leaders who look at those org charts and think to themselves, because I'm higher up there, I should get credit, or I should be the one getting the attention, or it should be all about me. You are destined to fail. And I will stand by that statement if I, as much as I need to, because the success of a leader is not in themselves, it's in their teams. So my approach has always been to be a little bit more background, quite frankly, when it comes to my teams, right? I want to make sure that if my teams are successful, they get the credit. If something has gone right, they're front and center and recognized in the emails or the announcements or whatever the case might be. My job is only to clear the obstacles to make sure they're successful, to be supportive, to be open, let them come to you with the good and the bad. Doesn't matter, right? It's not about judgment. It's not about, chastising people and making them feel terrible for making a mistake. We learn from those things. The goal, though, is as a leader, you must step out of the way of the spotlight. Let your people shine. Be at the bottom of the org chart, so to speak, and support all of the folks above you. When they win, you've done it right at that point, and that's my philosophy, simply. Whatever that takes.
So much humility in that as well, which I love, and it actually leads me really nicely on to past couple of years. They've been one hell of a roller coaster. It'd be great to hear this year in particular. What's the biggest leadership lesson that you've had?
I think, I think operationally as a leader, flexibility has been the message. But I think more than that, from a personal standpoint, it's about understanding. The last couple of years, I think it's been very telling to see how employees react differently to the situation. Some people have loved working from home. Some people have been absolutely out of their minds and they want to get back into face-to-face time. And it's really hard as a leader in any kind of role, it doesn't really matter, to look at a situation like the pandemic and say, okay, there's one response. Like everybody is hurting, or everybody is upset, or everybody is happy. You just can't. You can't challenge it. If one of your employees tells you, I'm really struggling, it's not for you at that point to say, well, I don't really think you are. Why would you? Or come on, I'm giving you everything you want. What's the big deal? No, we have to come from a place of understanding and say, okay, I don't understand why you're upset, but it doesn't matter what I think, right? So you tell me, help me understand. How is this hurting? How is this a challenge? How can we help make this easier? Within the realm of what we legally can do during a lockdown or a pandemic, right? I mean, there's only so much, but having that level of coming from a place of empathy and understanding up front as your first response, whether you get it or not doesn't matter. You've got to let the employee establish where they're at so you can help them.
Definitely. And that empathetic leadership approach certainly shines through from what you've said so far. But it'd be great, I guess, for aspiring leaders, what 3, I guess, characteristics and traits do you think are essential for success?
So empathy for sure. When you transition into leadership, no matter what your background is, you are now in a people-focused role, period. You could be a technologist, you could be in marketing, you could be a business leader, it doesn't matter. You are now in a people-focused role. So empathy has to be key. Consistency is another one. I often hear people talk about it from an integrity standpoint, but, and don't get me wrong, as a security person, integrity is very key to our business.
Yeah.
But consistency is more important to me in a lot of ways, because people need to rely on you. They need to rely on your responses. They need to rely on the way that you're going to address situations. And even if it's not always perfect, because we're human too, when people know that you're consistent, they know how they can rely on you better, and they'll work with you better. So consistency is really key.
It's a tough one to get right, consistency though, isn't it? Consistency. It's a tough one when you've, particularly when we've been through the challenging times that we've just been through. From my experience, our experience, it is a tough one to.
For me personally, it's something that it's a value that's really important for me and people in general.
Yeah,
is that consistent. You level, your expectations. When you walk into a meeting room, or you hop on a Teams with someone, that you're going to get this consistent approach day to day. And obviously, life does get in the way, and we are human at the end of the day, so things can be affected by that. But for me, I love that you said that, because that's something that I look for in people, and like really aspire to be, is to try and, as a leader, be consistent, so people know where they're at when they come to you at any time, that they can.
Exactly. I mean, think of that friend that you have that is always 30 minutes late to everything you do.
Yeah.
Right. And I've used this analogy with people before, because everyone thinks that leaders have to be these perfect, always perfect examples. And we're human. We're not going to be.
Yeah.
But if you think of that friend who's always 30 minutes late.
Yes. My friend.
Do you dislike that friend? Do you dislike that friend more than your other friends? No. Do you rag on them a lot? Like tell that person how terrible they are all the time? No. Do you tell them we're meeting at 4:30 when you really want to meet at 5, and you tell everybody else you're going to meet at 5?
Yeah.
And then he shows up at 5 o'clock like everyone else? Yeah, you do that. And frankly, your employees will do that to some extent too. If they know you are consistent in a behavior, right? They will also accommodate you to some extent, because once they see that that's how you function, for good or for bad, it's not going to be a judgment call. They'll learn how to work with that. And smart employees, quite frankly, will leverage that to their advantage. I mean, some of the best chief security officers I've worked for, once I understood how they spoke, once I understood the way that they would defend me in a meeting, as an example, I had a CISO who would never speak out in a meeting. So if I was on the hot seat and everybody's complaining about something we just did, and I was sitting there initially expecting, isn't he going to speak up and defend me? Isn't he going to step up and say, I'm the one who directed Nathan to do that, this is on me? Never did it in the meeting. Used to be frustrating until I learned he was going back behind the scenes after the meeting, talking to all of those leaders for those people involved, and not only explaining what really happened, but also using that as a coaching opportunity for them to help their staff not be so aggressive and not get into this finger pointing thing, and not to, to come at it from a more team approach. So it was a much more positive thing long term. But I had to learn as the employee that was how he operated. And once I did, had a lot more trust in the meetings, right? I knew he was going to follow up afterwards. We said it in the meeting. My stress level went way down because I knew I wasn't being hung out to dry. I knew it was going to happen. Right?
So, like you say, it was consistent.
That's exactly it. It may not be what you expect or the best approach. But it was a consistent approach. And once I knew it, my whole way I went about my job was better. I had a much better relationship with him. It works out a lot better. So consistency, you've got to just be true about yourself and who you are as a leader, and stay consistent about those things.
I love that. And Sandra knows that I am consistently terrible at admin. So she knows now. But at least I'm consistent, Nathan.
Fantastic. You said earlier, which I really wanted to come back to, obviously you've got long-standing experience within the industry. Your career started out in government, you're now consultancy, you've worked, across the spectrum. You said you described current company as Tenable as being, in terms of culture, one of the kind of best that you worked for, and that you weren't just saying that or being biased because you're there now. And obviously we're recording and this is going to be published, but I'm really interested to understand how you would describe the culture at Tenable, and what's great about the culture. What do you do really well that other people could, that either a little bit delayed on, or could be perhaps follow in your footsteps?
Yeah, boy, we could probably spend a whole lot of time about this topic, because I'm very invested in this. Frankly, this is part of the reason I came to Tenable. I've been familiar with the company for a number of years. I've had people who've worked here for a long time. I knew kind of what I was getting into when I came here. And Tenable really is, honestly, is one of the most inclusive and supportive cultures that I've come across, and especially in technology. This is a company that understands flexibility for its employees, right? We have, benefits to allow people to take, holidays when they need to take holidays. They've got, we have time for volunteering. We can take time off, pay time to go volunteer for charity work, or whatever good, positive nonprofit organizations that we want, that are important to us as employees. We've got tons of DE&I initiatives going on. There's internal groups that are supportive for different cultures, different just different affiliations within everything. It's kind of been amazing to me. The leadership, I give them a lot of credit here. The C-suite that we've got, they really believe very strongly in the strength of diversity, right? That when you bring lots of opinions to the table, when you bring a lot of different backgrounds to the table, you are a stronger company for it.
Yeah.
And we see that in senior technical leaders who are very, very, very involved in women in cybersecurity groups that are leading the way in women in cybersecurity kind of organizations all over the world. We've got pride groups that are very invested in those communities and helping to bring that kind of thing into the culture, and to bring education, like the STEM, STEAM, kinds of focuses found there. So Tenable really does commit into supporting all of it, quite frankly. And when I see them, it's one thing to say it, right? But when I see it written in policy, when I see, tangible benefits, time off, or whatever the case is, you're starting as a company to put your money where your mouth is. And that's a level of tangible support that, where a lot of companies will get into saying it because it's the right thing to say, and they think they're trying to save face. These folks here they're quietly doing it. And I think it's just an incredible kind of thing that I watch with this culture, that they really support these things so broadly. with throughout the company in so many ways.
Fantastic, brilliant. And it sounds like that Tenable's the sort of business that, just based on what we said, that are doing and supporting to give back, not just to their people, but the community. So you talked about women in cybersecurity, and obviously the big push and drive around D&I and different backgrounds and pride, which is amazing. Very in line with our kind of business values and how we operate as well within the industry. So it'd be really interesting to hear if there's any specific kind of programs or areas that the business kind of gives back and supports the local community or the tech community that you'd like to share.
Yeah, we actually do. I mean, it's an official name within the organization. We call it Tenable Cares. It is specifically designed for supporting our employees in their local communities to do volunteer work. So to the point I mentioned a moment ago, paid time off to do volunteer work within your community. That's a full day off every year, however you want to use that for whatever organization. The program also will match employee donations of these charities dollar for dollar, pound for pound, euro for euro, whatever it is.
That's great.
So
That's
if an employee really wants to put that in, Tenable matches those donations and helps support those kinds of things.
That's awesome.
The program also does a lot of, obviously we're very focused in cybersecurity, but we donate to scholarship programs for a lot of educations, middle schools, high schools, colleges. We help set up scholarship programs, grant programs. We'll support some of those programs with free software, if that's what the school needs to help their students.
Investing in future talent.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah, and even more recently, I mean, in the last few years, we've actually started to get involved into slightly bigger community-focused sort of things. So I mean, I'd have to go back and look at some of the details. And I apologize, I don't know it off the top of my head, but like we've done donations for like disaster recovery, disaster response sort of situations when there's been natural disasters and major areas affecting some of the places where our employees are based, that kind of thing. So it's a big focus for the company to step up and actually do something tangible and not just say we support our employees. We do, and we back it up with time off, the donation matches, the scholarship. Like there's a lot going on. Very, very big part of our culture here.
I love that pay it forward approach. And I think now over the past couple of years, it's really made, I mean, from a recruitment perspective, which is what we do, it makes such a difference when people are looking to cybersecurity. It is one of the most, I guess, competitive markets out there. I think if you have, and being a values-led organization, it does really, not just from a hiring perspective, but it does, I'm speaking to candidates day in, day out, and that's the sort of business they want to work for, people who care. So it sounds awesome that Tenable do that, which is great. I guess one last question for me, and it's ultimately, it's probably the most important that we go over today, because I'd love to know about how you support employee well-being. It's something that we can all improve on as business leaders and organizations. So it would be great to hear from your thoughts on that, about what you do that works really well, or what you've seen that works really well.
Yeah, I mean, again, Tenable in a lot of ways it leads us, and you really just said it. I mean, we're a values-led organization more than anything else, and part of that value is that essentially we are nothing without our employees, right? They are the centerpiece of what we do and how we're successful. And I can tell you just my own experience. I mean, I have kind of a unique position in the organization where I get to involve myself in a lot of different teams throughout the organization. And I don't think I've ever worked with or for an organization where I've sat down and said, man, that is a rock star employee. Or oh, that is a rock star. Like that person is just going the extra mile every day. Man, that's another person going there. The employees, they make it happen. And this company knows that and believes in that. So when we are driven by, your employees, and you're driven by the values they do, employees' well-being is frankly front and center of the whole thing. And so, you look at, like, we've always had a remote work program. period. I mean, that's always been the case. When the pandemic happened, the mantra from management was essentially, we don't care where you do what you do. We trust you.
Yeah.
We know you're going to do good work wherever you have to do it, when you have to do it. We know that you'll do the right thing. It's actually one of our core values, always do the right thing.
Yeah.
One
of ours
and,
as well.
Yeah. And people responded. I mean, everybody who, we knew we had to go to remote work for everyone.
Yeah.
But the fact that there were no real conditions, there was no, like, you must register which location you're going to be in, or you have to be there at this certain window of time, or whatever the case might be. Tenable already had that kind of thing of, we have to put the employees first, whatever that means.
Yeah.
So you need to take time off to take care of your family, do that. If you need to work from home, do that. You need to work from a Airbnb because you're quarantining, do that. Like, we don't care. Like, we need you to take care of you.
Yeah.
And strategically, that's always been part of what we've done. It just, I mean, the pandemic just really kind of made it a bigger thing from the company, because we were already there in a lot of ways.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So, and we've been working a lot on, trying to deal with, now, of course, we're 18 months in to this whole thing. And as I'm sure you're all well aware, we're all of us are very vested in the idea of the sort of the mental health and well-being of all of our employees. Right, we're coming out of a long stint. We're all very tired. We've been struggling with this thing for a long time.
Yeah.
So, we've also been very engaged about that. Tenable's always provided a ton of mental and emotional health kind of support and benefits, way above and beyond just traditional healthcare kinds of things. Lots of resources for employees around that. We've been providing extra time off for people. So we've actually had structured in several days of time over the last few months, just flat out paid time off for the entire company. Don't care who you are, go rest, like, go take a mental break.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So it's a very, very focused company in terms of making sure that the employees are taken care of. And it's made a huge difference for us in this time, for sure.
Fantastic.
I think it's clear that kind of people first approach runs through the veins of Tenable. So that's awesome. And obviously it aligns really well with your personal values. So do you know what, Nathan? It was an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast today. So thank you so much for coming on. Obviously, Sandra reached out to you because she'd noticed your name on the Cybersecurity Summit. When's your next speaking opportunity? When are you next approaching that virtual stage?
Boy, we're actually here in the US, we're starting to get back in person a little bit.
I was just going to say, have you got an in-person event coming
up?
Soon?
It's just starting to happen. I'm starting to bounce around a little bit. I'm actually going to be at Amazon's reInvent in Las Vegas in a couple of weeks.
Wow.
So we're going to be there talking about some cloud security stuff, doing a number of things with CIS in the upcoming months as well. So for folks who are the Center for Internet Security, they're a big organization around sort of standards for internet security. We're doing a number of talks next year with them, but I'll be at cities all over the United States. So we're starting to do quite a lot more. It's been great.
And if people want to reach out to you, is it best via LinkedIn or Twitter? What's the best form of contact?
Yeah, LinkedIn is easiest. Obviously, Nathan Wenzler is easy to find. I should be the only one out there.
The original.
I can be found on Twitter at Fedora_Nate. I don't post there as much as I probably should, but you can find me there as well. Okay. I'm also happy to connect directly with people if they want to reach out to me via email, nwenzler@tenable.com. I'm always available there as well. So happy to communicate however is easiest for people.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for your time. Really loved having a chat with you. Really interesting. And hope you enjoyed it as much as we did.
I appreciate the time as well. I absolutely love this, and hope we get to have more conversations in the future. This has been great.
Definitely. Thank you. For listening to our Let's Talk Leadership podcast, The Culture Edit.
If you would like to talk all things thought leadership and how you've embedded a positive organizational culture,
get in touch.
You can also follow us on LinkedIn and stay tuned by subscribing to us on Spotify or YouTube for future episodes. Stay tuned for our next one. Bye for now, guys.